Hello and welcome back to SSL TLS lecture series. This is episode 5 and I am Saravanan learning along with you. So in the last episode we saw that in block cipher the American government created a standard around in 1977 called Digital Encryption Standard, right? So we learned that this block cipher has an input of 64 bit and output of 64 bit and it can take a key size of 56 bits. We also learned that the security of DES is totally broken. So the usage of DES stopped sometime around 2005. So because it provides a very small key space. So you have 256 bit key. That means maximum you can have 2 power 56 keys, right? That means this you can do a brute force attack by trying all possible keys. There are dedicated hardware built for this purpose. So using those hardware you can easily break DES. So you should no longer use DES algorithm. Then we also learned that in roughly around in 2000 the American National Institute of Standard and Technology they invited another call for proposal to replace DES. So finally the finalist was selected called Advanced Encryption Standard. During that competition lot of people applied and they joined the final list of algorithm which was competing. So one such algorithm we learned that is called triple DES. So even though the final algorithm selected was AES, still triple DES are also used parallelly. We learned that triple DES has keyring option, right? So we mentioned that the first option, keyring option 1, where we have three keys K1 is not equal to K2 is not equal to K3, right? So each key is 56 bit. So 56 times 3 we will have 168 bit key. So normally when people say I am using triple DES, most likely they will be using keyring option 1. So you might think it can provide 168-bit security, but in reality there are certain meet in the middle attack. There is a lot of attack. There is one attack, it's not a man in the middle, it's different. Okay. There is another attack called man in the middle. Meet in the middle, sorry I forgot to write the middle. Meet in the middle attack is a different attack. So using this attack you can bring down the security to 112 bits. That is in 2 power 112 step you can break this algorithm. Further I also read about another research paper where you can bring down the security further to just 108 bits. That means in 2 power 108 steps you can break triple DES. Let's say if you are using keyring option 2, right? In keyring option 2, I mentioned K1 is not equal to K2, whereas your K3 is equal to K1. The same key is used as K3. So effectively you are only using two keys. That means each key is 56 bit. 56 times 2, you will get 112 bit key. So with this, if you use this particular mode, right, it is also prone to certain chosen plaintext attack as well as certain known plaintext attack. So using this attack, you can bring down the security of this to just 80 bits. So the NIST document, the NIST has a recommendation that if you use keyring option 2 for triple DES, the effective security is only 80 bits. That means you can break this in 2 power 80 steps. Okay, all these things you should keep in mind. But triple DES is still not totally broken, so you can still use. Although if you subject your SSL server for security rating such as Qualys SSL Lab, right? There is a kind of security rating provided by a company called Qualys. I think most of you might be familiar with this. So if you subject Qualys security server rating, if you are using triple DES, it will downgrade. It will not give the full mark. It will give a lesser mark. So if you are starting a new project, it's a good idea only to use AES algorithm. Okay. Okay. The last one, of course, you should not use the K1 equal to K2 equal to K3 option because in that case it will reduce to DES. So you will be prone to brute force attack. Okay. So that's about DES and 3DES. Now, all these things happened in America. So what other countries were doing? You might be wondering, right? What other countries might be doing? I told that the DES algorithm was roughly came sometime around 1977, roughly around that time. During those years, there was a Cold War between the American government versus the Soviet Russia, right? All of you know that there was a long Cold War running between US and USSR. So the mathematicians and cryptographers from USSR, they don't want to use the DES. Instead, they created their own algorithm called GHOST, G-O-S-T, GHOST. Actually, the algorithm number is GHOST 28147-89. Okay. No one know that USSR has invented this algorithm, because as soon as they invented this algorithm, they changed the classification as top secret. That means, except their spy agency KGB and top military brasses, nobody else know that such algorithm exists. All the government files and secret, everything was encrypted using the so-called ghost algorithm. Okay, this ghost algorithm is a block cipher. It takes a block size of 64 bit, same like DES. It takes a block size of 64 bit. The output is also 64 bit. However, the difference from DES is, in DES I told the key size is 56 bits, right? Whereas in the ghost algorithm, it came around the same time, but they were very clever. They used 256 bit key. And because of this, even today, December 2017, even today, this algorithm is not practically broken. Even though some theoretical attack exists against it, it is still not practically broken. It is still in use. Okay, you should remember that. Whereas DES is already broken in 2005 itself, its usage has stopped. Okay. Later, in roughly sometime around 1990, right, the Russian government has, I think it was still USSR or Russia, I don't know. So they changed the top secret into secret status. That means, for the first time, the world came to know that Russia has such an algorithm called Ghost, GOST, Ghost. Okay. Later, when the USSR broken up, sometime around in 1994, they finally released the algorithm to the world. So the whole specification was published to the world. And if you are interested, you can go and read RFC. It is available also as a RFC for programmers to implement this algorithm. So it is in RFC 5830. So if you are in Russia, all the Russian federal government communication must be protected. If you want a block cipher to encrypt the government related files and data, you must use this ghost standard. Okay. Okay. The ghost, I told the ghost input size is 64-bit block size, right? This 64-bit block size is not adequate. So later they also created a 128 block size. The block size equal to 128. And they created another version of the standard called, I think it's called GOES 34.12-2015. So this is another standard. So this is to support the block size of 128 bit. Initially, the original GOES algorithm did not have any name, so later they gave a name called Magma for this. That is the original 64 block size. Whereas the later algorithm got a new name. I think in English it's a bit difficult to pronounce. It's called Kuzniechik. If you know Russian, I think in Russian it's a bit relatively easy to write this. So if you know Russian, right, it is written something like this, Kuzniechik in Russian. Okay. I told you this Kuzniechik in Russian means it's called grasshopper. Grasshopper. Okay. So this guy support a block size of 128 bit. Okay. If you want to learn more about this algorithm, right, you can actually refer the RFC 7801. Okay. Now what about the security of this algorithm? What about the security of this block size 128? So let's deal one by one. First, let's take the Magma, the very first algorithm. For the Magma, several theoretical attacks exist for the Magma algorithm. So as per the best possible theoretical attack, you can attack using 2 power 101 steps. That means it provides a, as of today, the latest theoretical attack, if you try, it can be broken in theoretically 2 power 101. But this is only theoretical. No practical attack exists as of today. Okay. So you should keep that in mind. It's theoretical, it's extremely difficult to convert it into a practical attack. So as of today, still no attack exists against the original magma, that is Ghost original standard, which support a 64-bit block size. Okay. What about the 128-bit block size, that is the so-called Ghost? Even in this version, the key size is still 256 bits. Okay. There is no change in the key size. Only the block size has changed from 64 to 128 bit. So in Kuzniachik, what about the security of this Kuzniachik? When we talk about security, there are several parts for this. For example, we will say how much time it will take to perform this attack. That we call as time complexity. Okay, we call this as time complexity. You can also say in order to perform the attack, how much of memory is needed. That we call as memory complexity. The third thing is in order to perform the attack, you need to generate lot of data, collect the data and analyze the data, right? So that part is called data complexity. So whenever you perform a theoretical or practical attack, it can have time complexity, memory complexity and data complexity. If you use some of the best possible attack, as of today, if you use the best possible theoretical attack, if you want to break this so-called Kuzniachik algorithm, you need 2 power 140 step for time complexity. Similarly, for memory, you need 2 power 153 steps for memory. For data complexity, 2 power 113. That means it is literally impossible to break this in practice. It's much stronger. It is impossible to break as of today. So both the original Ghost as well as the enhanced, that is block size 128 Ghost, both are still not breakable even though some theoretical attack exists. So in summary, the Soviet Union produced two algorithms. The original Magma, that is the Ghost 2814789, which is a competitive algorithm for DES, for Russian federal government standard. Then they later produced a so-called Kuzniachik. Both till day it's not broken and it is still in use. Okay, what about other countries? For example, in Japan, right? In Japan, they have also very large group of cryptographers. So they came up with their own block cipher, which is exactly provide the security of AES. So there is a AES equivalent security block cipher, and it is called Camellia. Camellia. Actually, it's the name of a flower, right? If I'm not wrong. Okay. So in Japan, the Camellia cipher is same as the AES cipher. It is also a block cipher. It takes a 128-bit block size for as a plain text. It will produce a cipher text of 128 bit. Whereas the key size, you can have the key size either 128 bit or 192 bit or 256 bit for key size. So essentially it provides the same security as the AES algorithm. Later in RFC, the RFC number is 5932. Later they added in RFC 592 so that you can now use in TLS. Okay. So it can be used in SSL TLS. The details you can find it in RFC 5932. When we use in the FI, right, in FI, if you look at the Big IP version 12.0.0, we introduced the Camellia cipher support in Big IP 12.0.0 in our native stack. So it is directly built in TMM. So you can find the support in native stack. But if you use the default, by default in 12.0.0, if you use the default for client SSL server SSL profile, right, it will not support Camellia. So if you want to add support, let's say you have some federal government project in Japan, and if you want to add the support for Camellia, you have to manually configure your cipher string like this, default colon Camellia. Okay, so that's about the Camellia cipher in Japan. Okay, what about other countries? I will give just one more example, because if I keep telling, I have to forever tell only this. Okay, I will just go to one more country. So let's take South Korea. South Korea also created their own block cipher, which is exactly provide equivalent security to that of the AES algorithm. So a large group of cryptographers in 2003, South Korean cryptographer, they created a cipher, block cipher called ERRATA. I don't know how exactly it's pronounced in South Korean language. I just use like a English language, so I just call it ERRATA cipher. Okay. This guy is also exactly same like to our AES cipher. That means Your plain text is 128-bit block size, your output is going to be 128-bit block size, and your key can be either 128 or 192 or 256. So it's exactly same like your AES cipher. We haven't yet discussed AES. I will discuss the AES in a separate episode because there is lot of things to tell in AES. So I will postpone it for some other episode. Okay. Okay. Uh, I told you, right? This is a South Korean standard block cipher. In 2004, they finally standardized this algorithm, and now it has been widely used in Korea, especially for government to public services. If the government want to provide any public services and if it needs encryption as a federal standard, you can use this area within South Korea. So South Korea has their own standardization body called KATS. If you have handled South Korea federal project, right, you will know that the KATS stands for Korean Agency for Technology and Standard. So in KATS, they created a standard called KX 1213 colon 2004. So that is the standard for ARIA cipher. Later, the whole description of ARIA algorithm was published as the RFC. If you want to learn more about this, you can read the info in RFC 5794. That is the description of the ARIA encryption algorithm. Later, they also added the ARIA algorithm in TLS. So, if you want to use that in your SSL TLS, you can use this ARIA algorithm as well. I don't think we support this in Big IP. So, as far as I know, I don't think we support this. We only support the Camellia cipher. So, but it is available under SSL TLS. You can refer more information about the support in TLS under this RFC called 6209. Okay. So that's about the block cipher implemented by different countries. So far we learned in America they standardized DES, AES, triple DES. Then we learned in Soviet Russia. In Soviet Russia they have the so-called ghost algorithm or alias called magma or Kuzniatsik algorithm. And Japan has their own Camellia, South Korea has their own area. So we will just stop it here about this discussion. Next we will see, in order to implement a block cipher, let's say you want to design a block cipher, right? So what are the things you need? So what exactly is encryption? How encryption is implemented in a block cipher? For example, when we discuss stream cipher, right, I mentioned that encryption is typically on stream cipher is implemented using the XOR operation. So it will always take one byte from the plain text, one byte from the key. It will do a XOR operation and produce the cipher text, right? So similarly, in block cipher, what exactly is used for encryption? Let's take just to make things simple. What I am going to do is I will just assume a 2-bit block cipher. So if it is a 2-bit block cipher, you can only have 4 possible combinations, right? 00, 01, 10 and 11. Just to keep things simple, instead of using the number, I will call this fellow as A, alphabet A, B, C, D. So my input can be either A, B, C or D. So that is going to be my plain text, right? Then I will do the encryption and my output, obviously output is also going to be 2-bit. So that means output can also be either A, B, C or D. So in mathematics we have something called, let's say you do a simple mapping. Let's say whenever you give a input A, you will convert this fellow to B. Input B you convert to A. Input C you convert to D, and input D you convert to C. So this is our formula. In mathematics we call it one-to-one mapping, right? It also has another name called permutation. Permutation means changing, mapping your output, mapping something to another. Like here you have your input only 4 possibilities. So you are mapping this fellow now to B, A, D, C. So you are mapping something to something else within the same set. It's called permutation in mathematics. Don't worry too much about mathematics. Just remember it as a one-to-one mapping. Okay. So this is what we mean by encryption in block cipher. In stream cipher, we use XOR, whereas in block cipher, this so-called one-to-one permutation, this permutation is what we call encryption. So encryption is nothing but simply a substitution. Instead of one symbol, you substitute a different symbol. That's what we call encryption in block cipher. So how it is achieved? It is achieved using a one-to-one mapping. It has to be one-to-one, otherwise on the other side you cannot decrypt the message, right? If you do a one-to-many mapping, you cannot decrypt the message on other side. So it has to be a one-to-one mapping, and we call this as permutation. Okay. Okay. Now using this permutation, let's say I have a plain text called bad. This is my plain text. I want to encrypt this. So using this formula, what will happen? The B, if you notice the B fellow will become A, right? So you notice this, B will become A will become B, D will become C. So my plain text will become A, B and C. So this is my plain text, this is my cipher text, okay? So this is what we mean by encryption in block cipher. So encryption in block cipher is achieved what is called a permutation. But can I use any permutation? No. What you need is a secure permutation. So what is a secure permutation then? In order for a permutation to be secure, you need to have three properties. The first property is, let's say here I mentioned you can convert A to B, B to A like that, right? Here we manually made this decision that you have to convert A to B, B to A, etc. But in computer you cannot manually do like this every time, right? So you need to invent something so that that fellow can automatically create a permutation formula. Given a input, he will create a permutation formula. Accordingly, he will do the permutation and then he create the output. This is your plain text. That something is called key. That is, your permutation is decided by the key. How you should permute, what is the one-to-one mapping to use, is decided by the key. So that is our first condition. The permutation is always decided by the key. Okay, that's our first condition. The permutation should be determined by the key. Okay. What is our second condition? The second condition is, if you change this key, instead of key K1, if you change to key K2, automatically that fellow will change the mapping. Each key will produce a unique mapping. Each key will produce a unique mapping. So the moment you change the key, the kind of mapping, for example, now I will say A will be translated to C, B will be translated to D, something like that. So the mapping will be different now. So the moment you change the key, automatically the mapping will also change. Okay. So that's what we mean by different keys should result in different permutation. Different keys should result in different permutation. Okay. Now the third thing. Okay, fine. I created a new formula. So what is the third condition? The third condition is this so-called permutation for an outside attacker should completely look like a random number. That means whenever you use a key and the key produces this mapping, the outsider, there is no way for him to guess this what kind of one-to-one mapping he is using. It is going to be completely random. Having said that, in cryptography, when we deal with random number, right, there are two kinds of random number. One we call natural random number, just normal random number. But in real life, it is impossible to use to create random number using computer. Okay. So what cryptographer will do is they always choose what is called a pseudo random number. So there is a property. So pseudo random number almost look like a random number, but it is still a pseudo random number. So in cryptography, what we usually say is, let's say you generate a number using pseudo random number generator. Okay, let's call it X. You generate a real random number. Real random number only available in natural events. Okay, natural event. For example, the noise level that you can hear in the train station. All the natural event you can use the natural input which is happening in nature, and you can generate random number out of it. Okay. So let's say using the real natural random number, you are creating another random number. Okay. So if you, okay, you forget about this y. Let's take this x. So if you give this x to a stranger and ask him, hey stranger, I have a random number here. Can you tell me whether it came from a pseudo random number generator or it came from a random number generator? It is impossible for an outsider to know that whether it came from pseudo random or random number generator. That's what we call indistinguishability, meaning a outsider cannot distinguish whether a random number came out of a pseudo random number or real random number generator. So the third property we are looking here is the permutation should look random. Okay, the permutation should look random. So in order to be a secure permutation, it must obey these three properties. That is, your permutation should only depend on the key. It should only the key will produce the permutation. If you change the key from K1 to K2, automatically it will change the mapping. Okay, so different key will produce different permutation. The kind of mapping it is produced should look totally random. So if you obey these three, then it is called secure permutation. So in block cipher, if you want to implement a block cipher, you need a function that can produce this secure permutation. Okay. Now, I told you block cipher you can produce using secure, so-called secure permutation, right? Permutation. Okay. Is this secure permutation enough to implement block cipher? In practice, if you want to use a block cipher, secure permutation alone is not enough. Why? Let us use let's keep simple. Let us take a DES algorithm. In DES, I told the block size is 64 bit, right? Let's say you take a message. Your block size is 66 bits. That means the first 64 is here. There is remaining 2 bit here. Using a secure permutation, you can convert the first block into ciphertext. But what to do with the remaining 2 bits? Headache, right? I told you in the one of the episode, you can add a what is called a padding bit, right? You can add padding bit. But even if you add padding bit, you need to securely and efficiently convert this into ciphertext. So in order to handle message of any length, message of any arbitrary sizes, which doesn't strictly fall into multiples of block size, you need one more guide to convert the remaining part, right? So overall, if you want to handle multiple blocks of any length, you need a new fellow called mode of operation. So the purpose of mode of operation is to handle message of any length and to handle multiple blocks in a secure and efficient way. So secure permutation alone will not provide you encryption in practice. If you want to have arbitrary message length, okay, you need the help of mode of operation as well. So secure permutation in combination with a mode of operation, then only you can use a block cipher in real life in practice. So what my mode of operation is nothing but a simple mathematical function. You don't worry much about this. We will learn about this in a separate episode. Okay. There are several mode of operation. For example, the simplest is called Electronic Cookbook Mode of operation. Then we have cipher block chaining mode of operation. Then we have counter mode of operation. Then we have Galois counter mode of operation. So we have lot of things. Don't worry about this. Each one of them we will deal in a separate episode. Okay. Okay. So far what we learned? We learned in order to implement a block cipher, in stream cipher, encryption was done by XOR operation. In block cipher, encryption is done by one-to-one mapping, which mathematically we call it permutation, right? One-to-one mapping is a permutation. So secure permutation, we need to have three property. Permutation should be determined by the key. If you use different key, it will result in different permutation. The permutation should look random, okay? So with the help of a secure permutation and mode of operation, essentially we can implement a block cipher in real life. Okay. Okay. Okay, with that we have come to the end of this episode. So in summary, what we learned today, in the American government, they created a standard called DES. Later they also have a triple DES. Later they also have a AES. These three are block cipher. Triple DES is broken. These two are still not broken, although theoretical attack exists for triple DES. Okay. Then in Soviet Union, the so-called USSR, during the Cold War time, they created their own version of Ghost Standard. It has a nickname called Magma. Later they also have this Ghost Standard uses a key size of 256 bit. Because of that, even today it is still not breakable, right? We also saw a 128 bit block size version, right? This version has a nickname. It's called Kuzniechik. Okay, grasshopper. Remember grasshopper. So these two standard is still not broken. Then we saw in Japan they have their own standard called Camellia block cipher, right? Camellia block cipher. It is almost equivalent to AES in all aspects. Then we also learned in South Korea they have their own block cipher called ERRATA. This fellow is also almost equivalent to AES cipher. After this, we also learned about how to implement a block cipher. In block cipher, in stream cipher, we learned XOR operation is used to perform encryption, right? This is in stream cipher. Similarly in block cipher, we learned encryption is nothing but a one-to-one mapping. Okay, just a one-to-one mapping. Technically, we call it permutation, and we say we need to use what is called a secure permutation in order to implement block cipher. A secure permutation is nothing but it has to achieve three properties, right? The property one, what I told, the permutation should be determined by the key. Okay, if you change the key from k1 to k2, the permutation will be different. Okay, the resulting permutation should be totally random. If you follow this principle, it is called secure permutation. But in real life, this alone is not enough to perform encryption for block cipher. So you need one more guy called mode of operation. Mode of operation is nothing but if your input site is arbitrary size, it doesn't fall into fixed multiple of block sizes. It can be of any length. In that case, you need the help of mode of operation to perform a proper encryption using a block cipher. I told several examples are there for mode of operation like electronic cookbook mode, cipher block chaining mode, Galois counter mode, etc. All these things we learn separately in a future episode. So with that, thank you for joining today's lecture. We will see you again in episode 6.